All right, what is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Squawk with Swoop. This is a part of the Pies Board nomination series. I've got the pleasure to be here with Colin Moorehead, Pies Board nominee. Colin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for a chat. I really appreciate it.
G'day, Luke. Thanks everyone for your time, and thanks my son Joe for nominating me to come on today.
Yeah, so I put out a post for those who don't know. I put out a post on Instagram a couple weeks back, and Colin's Colin's son hit me up and said, "We like Dad needs to get on to have a chat with you." I was like, "Yeah, let's tee it up," and we finally teed it up. So yeah, Joe, thank you so much for that. But Colin, let's start with your like I did with Mark and Sean as well. Let's start with your Collingwood journey and how you came to be a Collingwood supporter.
Sure. Well, I grew up down in Cheltenham, in deepest, darkest St Kilda territory. Actually, grew up next door to Darryl Baldock, and I think around the time of the '66 grand final, I was just a toddler, and Mum put me in a Collingwood jumper to stir up the neighbours, and it kind of stuck. So my brothers, and I was one of six, and myself, all grew up Collingwood supporters from day one.
Yep.
Um, in my teenage years, going to Vic Park, standing on empty beer cans, trying to get a glimpse, was the rite of passage, Yarra Falls End, all of that, and then I went away. I graduated from uni, went overseas and out the country for about 20 years, and came back with four kids of my own, and signed us all up. So, 2 weeks ago, my first grandson was born, and he's got a membership on the way to Western
Already.
Australia. So,
So all forced into the black and white, which is how
yep.
everyone's journey pretty much starts.
Oh yeah, you got to get them young, don't you?
Exactly right. Colin, look, I've got a couple people asking who you are. So besides the Collingwood stuff, let the people know what you kind of do and talk about. I know you were president of a board committee and stuff like that, and you graduated from Harvard Business School, if I can speak. So I'll let you take it away, mate.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a geologist. I did a science degree at Melbourne Uni, and basically ran away from home and spent 20 years in the bush working in, basically looking for copper and gold, and working in mines and that sort of stuff. Played a lot of country football, and enjoyed living in rural and remote Australia, but also spent a lot of time in New Guinea, Indonesia, and more recently places like Mongolia and North America and what have you. So I kind of bring this sort of global aspect to things. Um, we came home in 2006. I had to get a haircut and a real job, and for my sins was ended up an executive in a fairly large company, running global exploration and development. And they were kind enough to send me to Harvard Business School, and I subsequently put myself through the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, which is a pretty useful course for people that want to be on boards. Um, I was also elected onto the board of the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, which is like the AMA for doctors, for mining people.
Yeah, huge.
It's,
Yep.
it's a really similar organisation. It's a member-based organisation. There's about 13,000 people who vote, but there's 75 to 85,000 geologists, metallurgists, engineers who work in the industry who are sort of attached to that organisation,
Yeah. Yep.
and it was a really old. It started at the same time as Collingwood, about 1893,
Oh,
and it was incorporated by a royal charter. And one thing that was really obvious is the old business model of relying on rusted on, mostly male members, wasn't going to be the way to take things forward. So we had to change things up, update all the digital technology, and become really a more inclusive and welcoming organisation.
yep.
Big efforts to get more women into that industry. As one woman said to me, you can invite us to the party, but you got to ask us to dance, and that means getting engagement
Yeah.
with people. So there's no point just growing the membership. You've got to actually get people engaged, and and that happens in different ways these days through different channels. It's some people can afford to and have the time to show up to the footy every Saturday, like I'm privileged to do in normal
Yep.
times. But some people can't. But and I would know. I would in just about every country in the world is a Collingwood supporter, and most of them emailed me and asked me to nominate.
So that was interesting when you said that the mining board that you were part of and as president on and formed around the same time as Collingwood. There's so many similarities. You said there was about 13,000 voting members, 85,000 members, sort of all up. So it kind of look obviously very different jobs and very different sectors, but lot of similarities too, and that experience would go hand in hand if you were to jump on the prize board as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because one thing about member-based organisation is people are passionate. I'm sure all the nominees for the board
Yeah,
are passionate Collingwood people, and, passion can be good and it can sometimes be not good because it drives all sorts of behaviours. So you can try and keep everybody happy all the time, but you're not going to succeed in that. But what you've got to do is what's best for the organisation and for the in a whole. And I suppose where I sit with it all is, if we keep doing what we keep doing, we're going to keep getting what we keep getting, and
yeah,
I think it's time for a change. Um, I absolutely welcome the fact that we're having a competitive election for the first time in God knows how long.
yeah, yeah,
And that's really one of the reasons I nominated. It's I think it's good and healthy that people get a choice. Um, and now that I've got a bit more time on my hands and the skill of being on boards in both business and in member-based organisations, I'm going to put my hand up and help if I can, and that's my only motivation, to help if I can.
yeah,
I don't,
exactly.
I have no other agendas other than to see our club very successful.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I just want to just hop on that point again and ask another question about the board that you're on with the mining. How did you guys? Because it's exactly the same thing as Collingwood, 13,000 members and 85,000. How did you get the rest of the mining community? I don't know if that's what they're called, but the mining community guys and girls. How did you get them to kind of back your project, even though they couldn't? They didn't have the voting. They didn't have the voting rights, like 70,000 or 75,000 Collingwood members don't at the moment either.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one, isn't it? The paid up financial members of that organisation can vote. Normally you'd be happy if you get half of those people voting, but those that are really engaged do. But your customers, if you like, are broader than your voting members. In Collingwood's case, it's all the members that are, the whole range of memberships available now,
Yeah,
and they're all welcome. And I would say, they're all should get a say.
yeah,
In that particular example, all of our members are customers, but not all of our customers were members. So what we did is putting online content out there, running webinars, events, making stuff accessible and value adding. So you create a value proposition for everyone to buy in.
yep,
And I think a footy club's the same. You got to create a value proposition. Some of us, it's just utter dumb blind emotion. but for others, well, why would I tie myself up to this brand, and that's what it
yeah,
is. Um, so we had a problem with that organisation, and it was in tough times, as times go up and down, and mining is a great example of a cyclical industry. Sometimes it's a bonanza, and sometimes it's really tough.
yep,
You can't just rely on memberships and a few conferences. We had to do corporate partnerships with people, with organisations.
yep,
We had to get into training, so diversify the revenue. the old digital platform was just broken. It was really clunky and hard to
Yeah.
use, and
Yeah.
so a whole heap of money went trying to get that up to speed and just make it easy to use. And the other thing was really work on the inclusiveness. If it's really hard to join or expensive to join, and you need a letter from all four grandparents, to get in, that's not a really good model. I
Yeah.
think you make the place welcoming, and then you can invest as much time and effort and money in as you want to. In my mind.
Yeah, and you talk about inclusivity as well, and obviously, we've got Collingwood. I don't know. It's probably me being biased, but I think Collingwood do it the best out of anyone with our Super Netball team, our AFLW team, the wheelchair team that just won a premiership and stuff like that. And some people don't really realize is that the Collingwood board is for all of these teams. You think some people just think of Collingwood, they think of the men's, but we're such an inclusive side now that keyword inclusivity just really comes into play, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to go to season launch a couple of years ago. My brother, who lives in Queensland, who runs the Bagara Magpies, which is an informal fan group,
Yeah.
he was player sponsor for Adam Treloar.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Yep.
and he wasn't able to get to Melbourne, so he sent me an invitation, and I went along, and you got to meet, not only the players but also the women and the netball and the wheelchair stuff, and it was a bit of an eye opener, and I don't think most Collingwood members or supporters actually know how deep and broad that is.
Yeah. And that comes into the what you were saying before about digital platforms, and our social media team do a fantastic job with all of this, and just putting eyes out there just on that inclusivity sector. I've asked Mark and Sean this as well. You know, the Do Better report is always going to come up to any sort of board member. Just your eyes around that. There's a newsletter that goes out quarterly in regards to it. Are you when you nominate, do they kind of say here's the sort of what you've got to look at with this? Do they give you the Do Better report to kind of to go over as talking points or to have a look at?
Oh, they haven't, but I've looked at it all on the
Yep.
on the website and the quarterly reports. Listen, I've spent a lot of my career working with Indigenous groups
Yep.
in Northern Territory, Western Australia, what have you, and I was at Vic Park when Nicky Winmar lifted his jumper, and I'm thinking, here we are in 2021, and have we
Yeah.
really changed and evolved? And to see Eddie Betts, in tears, as he left
Yeah.
football, to me, I'm thinking, the problem's broad, and just because we have a Do Better report that says Collingwood's got a problem doesn't mean 17 other AFL clubs and society in general don't have a problem. But at Collingwood, too bloody right, we got to do better. And if I know one thing about my Indigenous friends, and that is they can pick bullshit a million miles away. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be
Yeah.
real, and you got to live those values. And I have a very strong opinion that to be really successful, the club has to have a really authentic culture. In business, we say culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's hard to describe it, and I don't want to invite the Tigers too much, but if you look at Peggy O'Neill and what she did with Richmond, and
Yeah.
Kate Rock and what she's doing with Melbourne, you got to get all that right to give the boys and girls on the field a chance, right? And I think that's where we need to take club. That stuff. Being a good corporate citizen, a good community member, being there an inclusive organisation that's just a good footy club, and when you're in a good footy club, be it the mighty Parks Panthers up in New South Wales who I played for, or be it Collingwood, the culture is how it feels to be there, and you go to the MCG, there's a certain feel about it. I go up to the Legends Bar and have a beer before the game and see familiar faces, and that's culture. But the culture's much broader than that. It's you know nothing bothers me more than seeing horror stories in the
Yeah,
paper about Collingwood stuffing up yet again, or someone muddying the Collingwood brand. We got to be better than that.
yeah, no, I agree, 100%. Look, when you hypothetically you get onto the board and you're there for 3 years, what is one what is one thing that you would love to accomplish in those 3 years? I know, like, there's a lot of there's another six other board members and there's all voting and stuff. But what is if you were to get on there? What is one goal, one personal sort of goal that you would like? For example, you'd love to see the VFL boys just smashing it at Vic Park every weekend or something like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you got to let the footy department do the footy stuff,
Yeah,
but I would like to see. I would like to. I think that board members should rotate. There should be maybe you get 3 years and maybe a maximum of another term. But I don't think it should go on forever. I liked Eddie and all the rest of it, but that went on too long, right? And in business, we would call that, it's a governance issue. So I'd like to see, Peggy's just left the board, I think, of Richmond after she came and did what she wanted to achieve.
yep,
They had a big, hairy, audacious goal of 3 flags, and
yeah,
everyone
they
laughed,
did. They did. Yeah.
and they delivered it, didn't they?
Yep. Yep.
So you know what, I'll go in there with a big, hairy, audacious goal as well, and I think I would look at every decision through: is this going to win us a flag? Is this going to make us a more successful club? And I don't mean just this flag. I mean, so if the culture of if what it takes is a catalyst or a change agent to get us to a different place in 3 years' time, that's what I would want to be part of. And my fear is that if we just do what we've done in the past, we'll be having another Do Better report in 2043, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, probably not, but that's
No, I
not
know.
where
I
we
know what
want
you're
to be.
saying. Yeah. So
But I think I've just turned 57, and we've won 2 flags in my lifetime,
yeah.
right?
All right.
We've lost about 14 grand finals and drawn a couple, but so we've been a very successful club. And I think really good teams might pinch a flag every now and then, but really good clubs like Hawthorn in the 80s, like Richmond, they'll put a team and a list together and create the perfect conditions for a period of real success. And we haven't had that since I've been on the ground.
Yeah, definitely, and that kind of leads into something else that I wanted to touch on. That the perfect segue. Look, as Collingwood supporters, we kind of tout that we're the biggest and best club in Australia. And I remember talking to Paul Q. I think it was in the Q&A, and he was name dropping like the clubs like Manchester United and Juventus, and that's how big that we kind of want to be, but we have to drop that ego and I feel like, and as probably everyone sort of agrees with, as you kind of touched on, 2 flags in your 57 years, we're not there. What do you think it would take? And premierships aside, because we know that, winning 3 flags in a row like Hawthorn did in the 2010s is always going to boost you and stuff like that. But what do you think what can we do to take ourselves to that next level and be the powerhouse that we think that we are?
Well, you do have to pay Eddie in that era for professionalising the club and getting
Yeah,
us ahead of the pack. But
100%.
arguably everybody else is caught up now.
Yep.
And whilst we're a financially strong, well resourced club, I think that the future is going into the 21st century is capturing the hearts and minds. It's a bit like in business these days. It's not good enough just to be a really profitable company.
Yep.
You have to be ahead of the game on community environment stuff. You need to have a position on climate change, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You have to be a good corporate and community citizen. So I think to be a real club, you got to be more than just a really good brand.
Yep.
right? I mean, Man United, Ferrari, I've seen the Patriots play at Foxborough. It's just a massive experience. It's a huge thing. But I think it's got to be deeper than that. You got to be an authentic football club with a really engaged member base, and you need to have strategies to get there. So just being big isn't good enough.
Yeah.
You got to be good. You got to be, and good in my view is fair income. It's what Harvard School would call authentic.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe it. You know it when you see it.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I got a question from Nato Callow Gaming. He says, "Hey Colin, how will your past experiences equip you to direct the club in the direction of more premiership success? Do we need to be more ruthless, less ruthless? What's the approach look like to you?"
Yeah, that's a really good question. Listen, I think you got to create the environment, the culture that supports the playing groups on the ground. Um, and you have to build the talent. I mean, it's really nice to see father sons coming through.
Yep.
And I do remember the young Daicos boys toweling up young Joseph when he was playing for the Ashy Redbacks one day. They absolutely smashed us. And I thought, oh well, that's good. But you've got to position the club for success in every way to allow the players to get there. I think I'm a bit of a subscriber to Paul Riz's no dickheads rule. I believe in really strong leadership.
Yep.
I believe you got to be more than just a good footballer to do really well. You've got to be a good person as well. And we put a lot of pressure on our boys, and I wouldn't want to comment on any particular issues, but because everybody makes mistakes, particularly when they're young. So we need to nurture those kids and get them to where they need to be.
Yep.
But if people continue to stuff up, you get the culture you expect. You walk past, so you get what you deserve. And so at some stage, you've got to say, no, that's not acceptable at Collingwood. So you've got to set and maintain a very high standard. Be as ruthless as you like out on the footy field. I was a big fan of Alistair Clarkson's unsociable football. Get in there and play hard.
Yep.
Celebrate your wins. Be humble and just in defeat. Just be fair dinkum and get out there and have a crack. But not at any cost, right? And I don't know what happened with our player list, but I'm looking at my calendar last month, and there's Jaden Stevenson on it for October, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, geez, he had a good year, didn't he, for
Yeah.
North Melbourne?
Yeah.
So I think you got to build a sustainable, competitive position on the ladder, and put yourself in a position to have a crack more years than not.
Yeah, beautiful. We've got another question here from Chris Quinane. Sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name. He says, "Hi Colin, how do you get the Collingwood Army paying into membership when the types of memberships on offer are very limited to supporters outside of Victoria?"
Yeah, that's a real good question. As I said, I've got a brother up in Queensland who was a player sponsor, and back then he had a vote, and then when when he came to vote this time, he realised he didn't have one because he'd done due to the pandemic or whatever.
Yep.
Isn't a player sponsor anymore. It's interesting. I've had the privilege or scary experience of spending an afternoon with the WA Magpies in Perth.
Okay. Yep.
Really strong group of Collingwood supporters over there, and you'd be surprised. There's strong Collingwood groups everywhere, and they do put on events, be them virtual or real, around the country. So there's a Collingwood supporter group in Jakarta, right?
Oh well.
They may not be official, and I think we should be reaching out to those groups and engaging with them somehow, and giving them a real felt experience about being part of the family. And if they do happen to be in Melbourne, we should find a way to get them to a game. It's obviously people drive from regional Victoria when they can, but I think we should make it possible for people interstate, overseas, and in the country to engage somehow. But there are some really good groups around the country, and we should formal and informal, and we should engage with them. Again, it's about that value proposition I spoke about.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of I follow Manchester City in the Premier League, and they have official supporter groups all throughout the world. I know there's one in Melbourne that meet at the Imperial whenever they have a game, and there's one in India. They've got the sister club in New York and stuff. And what you just said about the members in, or the non-official supporter group in Jakarta, that definitely could be a market that we can tap into, or the board, the Collingwood club can tap into that I haven't heard before, and that's a new take, and that would be that'd be pretty good, to be honest.
I was in an island in remote part of Indonesia, and I had to hire a guy to teach us Aussies a bit of Bahasa and teach the Indonesian guys and girls a bit of English. And I picked him up, and I just picked him out of the yellow pages. And I said, "Oh, listen, mate, your English is really good. Where'd you learn that?" And he said, "Deakin University. I used to work at the Hilton Hotel on the weekends." And I said, "Oh, who do you support?" And he said, "The Mighty Magpies." So I picked an Indonesian guy out of the yellow pages in remote part of Indonesia, and he was a Collingwood supporter. Right. You'd be
Crazy.
surprised, you know.
Well, you always see what's that team? The random South fan that's always in some sort of sports thing. So there's always that sort of love worldwide. And Eddie used to say it as well, that we're not just Australia bound, and Collingwood supporters uh, are all over the world. I want to touch on in your Collingwood bio, or sorry, in your bio that you put onto the Collingwood website. You say I'm an independent and have no prior agenda other than to help in a positive way. I believe that the truly successful clubs have something in common: a very authentic footy culture. We talked about footy culture and culture just in general a little bit before. I kind of wanted to touch on the independent aspect, and not going in there not without any bias. That's not the word I'm trying to look for, but I guess just going in there as an independent, and how you kind of would sit on the board with that.
Well, I think we are where we are, and looking backwards is not really useful. So to me, it's a
Yep.
line in the sand, and every decision we make from today going forward influences the outcome. And as I said to you, I'll be looking at, well, is this getting us closer to where we need to be, or is this taking us further away? And by independent, I mean, I'm not part of the inner circle
Yeah. Yep.
Melbourne
Yep.
club that's been. I'm well known globally, and I think I bring a bit of a global perspective and a bit of a country perspective
Yep.
to the thing. I've spent enough time away to appreciate what it means to be a Collingwood supporter and to have the privilege of being here. And I'm a big boy. I'm on the board of a few ASX listed companies, and I chair a couple, and I know my way around a boardroom. I'm not going to get bullied by anyone.
Yep.
And I think leadership's really important. It's important on the ground. It's also important off the ground. And to me, leadership is behaving the way you want everyone to behave. To make it really clear. This is how things are done around Collingwood, and then you have to live those values. And if you don't, well, people for what it is. And when I say authentic, that's what I mean. Everybody, without being robots,
Yeah.
everybody, knows that this is the expected way and the high standards we're going to operate to at Collingwood. I once went to a rugby league game, South versus Melbourne Storm. Sorry.
Yep.
and we had Mal Meninga helping us with safety up in New Guinea at the time. He's a god up in New Guinea, and he took us to the footy. I'm not a big rugby league person, but and afterwards he took us to the pub, the Vaucluse in Swan Street, and those I always thought rugby league players are just buffheads, but they all came in after the game, well dressed. They spoke well. They were polite. They were having a couple of beers after the game, but I thought, geez, what a professional bunch of people. You just see it, and I wasn't expecting that from a league team, probably due to ignorance on my part. But you see what you see in the media, and I saw some really high quality people flying the flag for the Melbourne Storm that evening.
Well, that's why they're one of the better rugby organisations in the country.
Well, yeah, and I was talking to one of the fathers of one of the kids, and he said there was only two clubs he let his kids go to, and one was Broncos, and the other was the Storm. Due to that, and he was making a cultural comment. So I want people to send their kids to Collingwood.
And that's the goal. I'm just waiting for Nato. Cal's got another question, but he's put a 1 out of 2 here. Nato, you got a question, dude? Or I think I'm waiting for a second part. The first part says, "Hi, Colin. Thanks for the answer for the last of my questions. It would be hard to ignore the influence Eddie Maguire had over football operations at the club, for better or worse. One of two. So just waiting for that 2 of 2 to come. But in the meantime, while we wait for that, as a fan, take away the board thing for a second. Nick Daicos, how excited are you to see him? You said he towered up Joe.
Oh, mate, so excited. I mean, as I said, I saw those kids play junior footy against my kids, and it was just another level. And we've got it's great to see Darcy playing on, and the Brown boys as well. But Nick Daicos comes with huge raps. So I hope the pressure isn't, and the expectations aren't too much, and we don't put too much on him. But I would love to see him. I had a debate with Joe the other day where he should be playing. I think, well, Joe was voting for whack him in the midfield and let him run wild, and I'm sort of let's let him get a big body first before he gets crunched. So I'm just absolutely super excited by that. I think it's always darkest before the dawn. We've been at this level before. Melbourne was at 17 2 years ago. So I think and I am a subscriber that a champion team beats a team of champions. So I tweeted on my Facebook. I watched the 2011 preliminary final last night when Collingwood came from behind to beat Hawthorn. A cracking game. It was Cyril Rioli and Buddy Franklin, and that great Hawthorn side, and we'd had a good year. Unfortunately, we didn't win the following week, but that was a champion team. That was Daisy Thomas. Daisy Thomas ran down Cyril in the last 30 seconds to
game-winning tackle, pretty much,
to basically save the game. Luke Ball, stoppage goal, put us in front. It was just a cracking team.
In all aspects of it. Look, Nato, for our final question, Nato's come back and hit us up. He says, and which I think is a good question as well to end on. From your experience, what is your take on the separation between the football department and an administration side of the club? And this relates to what he said before about it would be hard to ignore the influence Eddie Maguire had over football operations at the club.
Listen, I was lucky to go in the rooms a few times, and I saw how good Eddie was with the families of the players and around that group. But he was obviously influential. I believe the president's got a role to be seen and be present. I think board members less so. You just sit in the background and let the president be the spokesman. But in general, by principle, I think you should leave the footy to the footy department. make sure that as a board you make sure the list has been managed properly and you got the best people you can get in that footy department. But yeah, I would hate to be the coach or the head of football and have the president looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. I think in business and in anywhere, people are happiest when they're empowered to do the job, and that means given the freedom,
Yeah.
given the resources, given the limits of authority to do what they have to do, and you're there to support them. So I would hope that there's a clear separation there, and you let the footy department get on with it.
And let them do the talking.
Yeah. Once that culture's set, and sometimes there might be something happening inside there that needs to be escalated to the board. But I think that should be pulling help rather than the board pushing help onto them.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And look, I just got another one here. Chris Quinane says, "How will the board provide, or how will the board provide transparency to the members on what the roadmap for the next decade and who's responsible for the delivery on all areas for improvement?" Now, I know that's a hypothetical. Like, if you do get on the board, it's just how do you think that we can provide even better, well, not even better, just transparency? Because we know that Fremantle just came out with a 5-year a 5-year plan. We were talking about Richmond. We were talking about Richmond earlier. Carlton, I think we're still smelling what they're cooking, and Collingwood, we kind of don't. We don't really have that at the moment. The last plan that I can remember, and I'm sure someone.
Well, as I said before, I'm a big fan of big, hairy, audacious goals, and I had a boss who used to say, if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. In other words, you do need to have a plan, right? And and I think that's a plan and a vision that should be made public and understood by all your stakeholders, and that's the voting members and the non-voting members and everybody else that's got calls himself a Collingwood supporter should understand what we're doing. I think it's clearly, it's the role of the board to help with the strategic planning and the setting of the culture, but it's up to management, and that's the CEO and CEO down to execute that plan.
No, 100%.
And also from business, what gets measured gets managed. So you need to have KPIs, if you like, and report how you're going against those, right?
Of course.
Otherwise you don't know where you're going.
No, definitely. Look, Colin, we've been going for about 40 minutes. I appreciate you coming on, taking your time out to have a chat to me and have a chat to some of the fans as well. Good luck with your nomination. And I think we'll find out. I think voting closes the 10th off the top of my head. And the AGM's on the 16th.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But,
well, thanks very much, Luke, and thanks to everyone for your time. And go the Pies.
No worries, mate. All right, I'm sure we'll talk in the future, mate. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye. See you guys.